we are ready for the second session. So we'll be going into the decision-making part. So of course, we have done the clinical examination. We have done an examination to differentiate between spasticity and contracture. We have done the gait analysis. We also do the examination of the anesthesia. We have to set realistic goals and decide the surgical dose we'll be using. So management team, of course, as I said, is a multidisciplinary approach. So we need pediatrician, neurologist. There are many other specialties which are involved in the treatment of these kids. So the goals have to be realistic. We have to maximize, ultimate aim is to maximize the motor functions, the activities of daily living, to minimize development of secondary problems, and delay the need of surgical intervention if at all. Now we develop a treatment plan when we sit with the parent for the first time. We define long-term objectives of the treatment based on the GMFCS age and severity. We need to assess the parent education, their expectation. We need to teach them how to position the kids, like a kid with a rectus tightness, which should ideally be positioned in a prone position. So that helps to stretch out the deformities. Now, if a patient has a flexion deformity, we can ask the parents to keep pillows under the ankle when they sleep. So that gives an extensive stretch to the hamstring. So different ways where we can teach the parents. Of course, growth and nutrition has to be supported, and medical management of the associated problems, especially the dyskinesia part and the seizures, is very important. The various treatment options include physical therapy, as you all are involved in every stage of management of these kids. So you all play a very important part in the management of every type of cerebral palsy, right? So the first treatment is physical therapy, which includes muscle strengthening, gait training, right? Be it post-operative, pre-operative, kids who do not require surgery, all kinds, be it ambulatory or non-ambulatory. Now, management of the spasticity is again very important. Can be done either by stretching exercises, can be done using stone inhibitory cast, can be done using Botox, it can be done using various kinds of neurosurgical intervention like selective dorsal lysotomy or an ITP pump. These kids also need good orthotic support, walking aids, and sometimes we need to do some soft tissue surgeries and body surgery. So basically we have to assess the surgical dose if at all we need a surgery. So in short, if we need to summarize, a young kid, usually less than between 2 to 6 years of age, we usually do well without surgery, except when they have torsional problems or if their hip is going up. These are the only two conditions when they'll need surgery before 6 to 7 years of age. Before that, most of the kids will do well with stretching exercises, gait training, Botox, which can always be repeated, every 6 months to 1 year. So, and a good rehab, of course, is the pivot around which all these treatments are based. So that's in summary. So kids more than 6 to 7 years of age having various kinds of deformities may need soft tissue surgeries and sometimes bony surgery, of course. So hip and torsional problem need to be corrected early in the age. You should keep this I think the only take-home message we can take from the webinar is not to miss out on hip. Right? Get a pelvis X-ray as per the guidelines of American Academy of Cerebral Palsy. Assess the hip clinically, but important thing is clinical assessment may not necessarily correlate with the status of the hip. A good range of motion doesn't mean the hip is inside the socket. That is the thing I want to emphasize on, right? Serial X-ray pelvis is important and it has to be in a standardized way, and the angles have to be calculated the way, So you can always walk in with your parents in our hospital. I'll be glad to help you to assess the gait, to decide the objective, to decide the plan of the management. You all are most welcome to come to our hospital with your parents and your kids, and we can work out the management plan of the kids. Now, physical therapy, of course, has to be individualized. We give a realistic expectation based on the GMFCS level. There are various developmental training programs which you all do. I think you all are well versed with them. Gait training, balance training, the facilitation technique to lower the tone, the proper positioning of the case. Stretching helps to reduce the muscle, helps in muscle growth, reduce the muscle tone, and obviously in long term prevent contraction. So the goal of physical therapy goes from top to bottom. That means it starts cephalocaudal. So we need, unless the child has a good trunk balance, a trunk muscle strength, he won't be able, there's no point working on his walking ability. The child needs to be made a sitter first, then the patient will be able to stand. The patient able to stand, and we can make him walk. So it has to be cephalocaudal, focus on trunk first, then the hip, then the hamstring and the standing ability, and then the walking, and then of course the, if possible, running. So tone inhibitory casts are one of the options, not tolerated very well with smaller kids. They have poor compliance, but yes, they do help in smaller kids with less spasticity. So the casts are usually given under general anesthesia to correct the flexion deformity at the hip and the knee and the ankle especially. There are various kinds of orthotics and walking aids which we use. So I'll just quickly go through them. This is the floor reaction orthosis, which is useful in a crouch gait patients. Basically, in short, if we see the floor reaction orthosis basically helps to push the tibia forward. So as I spoke about the Ghon reaction force being posterior to the knee in a crouch gait patient. So if these kids are fitted with an FRO, helps to push the tibia forward, and the ground reaction force ultimately starts to go through the knee or in front of the knee. So this helps to give a plantar flexion movement as well as a knee extension movement. So it helps to improve the gait. But of course, this has to be supplemented by lengthening of the hamstring, done something to the flexion deformity at the knee and the hip. There are various other modalities. But yes, for the ankle, FRO is very good for crouch gait patients. Now, these are various kinds of braces which we use. This is the Boston brace for neuromuscular scoliosis, which we commonly see in severe spasticity. This is the knee ankle foot orthosis. This is the trunk hip ankle foot orthosis. This is the thumb abduction pin. This is the ankle foot orthosis. The CP chair for a GMFCS 4 or 5 kid. Different modalities. This is the functional hand and forearm splint. These are the wheelchair. This is the wheelchair which we use. So there are various kinds of orthotic devices which we need to use. Now, botulinum toxin, of course, is one of the mainstay in kids less than 6 years of age. And most important thing in using botulinum toxin is to exclude the presence of a contracture. This is the single most important thing which we need to assess. Contractures do not respond to botulinum toxin. You should understand that, right? So how does botulinum toxin works? So basically, the botulinum toxin blocks the docking of the synaptic vesicles containing acetylcholine at the nerve endings. So basically, the neuromuscular transmission is blocked. That is how the botulinum toxin works. It is the most toxic toxin which humankind knows. So it has to be done properly. The injection has to be done properly, given in the muscle belly. Should never be injected intravascular or intraneural. So this is a way we block the neuromuscular transmission. So yes, these neuromuscular transmission, they recover after 6 months approximately. But yes, the botulinum toxin gives us a window to stretch out those spastic muscles using cast, good rehab. So that is what we do, and sometimes it also helps in preventing secondary deformities, helps in preventing deterioration of the gait. Yes, so kids should be less than 6 to 7 years of age and should not be used in dyskinetic kids and those who have contractures, or kids less than 1.5 years of age. So what is the aim of orthopedic surgery? We only aim to prevent muscular contractures, release the muscular contractures if at all, and correct the skeletal deformity, which are actually a liver arm diseases. So the abnormal gait is taken care of, the secondary abnormalities is taken care of, there are some tertiary abnormalities because of the deformities which we see. So we have talked about the liver arm dysfunction, which is basic to the pathology of cerebral palsy. We have understood how there are different types of liver. It's type 1 liver, type 2 liver, type 3 liver, where different, the fulcrum changes, the direction of effort and load changes. So all these are disturbed in cerebral palsy kid. Now, if we talk about the hip, as the hip goes into coxa valga, or there is coxa breva, the abductor arm again shortens and the hip usually starts going out and ultimately dislocates. We have discussed all this. I think this is all we have discussed. So what are the goals of orthopedic surgery? This is to improve the gross motor function within the GMFCS, to reduce the crouch, to get a plantar gait seat, to optimize the efficiency of gait and improve the physical function. Now, indications will be brain autotic intolerance, pathological gait, foot deformities, overlapping toes, and as a part of single-level, multi-level surgery. Surgery is mostly reserved for ambulatory kids. So the surgical principles include obviously releasing the biarticular, multiarticular muscles. We do not touch the monoarticular muscles, and we try and do all surgeries, whether bony or soft tissue, in one sitting. That is to minimize the morbidity, to minimize the birthday syndrome, so-called birthday syndrome, so that the kid is not subjected to surgeries every year of his life, and we can maximize the outcome of surgery and get an effective outcome as early as possible in the year. Now, surgery, as I said, should always be done in a spastic or a missed types. Dyskinetic kids are not good candidates for surgical intervention. And of course, hip screening is must in all cases. These are the various kinds of surgeries which we do: Botox in the muscle belly, the hamstring lengthening. These are the tendon transfer, the rectus to the tendinosis transfer, semicondylosing to the rectum magnus transfer, the extension of taut knee. This is a guided growth. So these are various kinds of surgeries which are possible, which are done in kids with severe deformities. So what are the indications for a soft tissue surgeries? Of course, contracture, where Botox won't help, and an imbalance and the overpowering muscles. So these are the common muscles around the hip, around the knee, around the ankle, which we touch. I think we have spoken about all of them. Hip flexors, the knee flexors, and the ankle plantar flexors. These are the important group of muscles which we usually touch on. Now, the surgery in cerebral palsy is not at all difficult. It's a very simple, but the decision making, which muscles to release, how much to release, what muscles to be left alone. This is the most important part. The decision making in the surgical intervention is most important. Surgery itself is not that difficult. So these are the common surgeries which we do: re-lengthening of the tendons, intramuscular tenotomy, myofascial releases, tendon transfers, and tenotomy, as I explained. But decision making is important, like in these kids. A kid with a hidden equinus and a real equinus will need a gastric lengthening, gastrocnemius lengthening. But a kid with an apparent equinus will worsen with a gastrocnemius release. These are the important things. These are different types of gastrocnemius releases. These are types of musculotendinous lengthening of gastrocnemius which we do. Not going into details of everyone. These are the different types of surgery in various types of gait patterns. There are some common procedures, bony procedures which we do is derotation osteotomy, as I said. So derotation should be done as early as diagnosed. A kid with a severely anteverted hip, walking with an in-toeing, or a kid with a extreme external tibial torsion should be corrected early. Even a 3 or 4 year old kid with a severe anteversion or external tibial torsion should be corrected. Any hip which is going out, getting subluxed, should be relocated as soon as possible, because that window of opportunity is small. So we need to keep a high index of suspicion. So these are the osteotomies we have talked about. Now, foot deformities can be deferred to a later date. Single event multi-level surgeries is the gold standard. Whatever I've spoken about are usually done in same sitting. So basically, if a child is with a crouch gait, we try and correct all the deformities starting from the hip, the knee, and the ankle in one sitting. And if at all we need to defer a surgery of a foot because of the prolonged length of the surgery, we need to space it out within 2 to 3 months of the index surgery. So the aim is to maximize the outcome, to minimize the morbidity to the kid, and of course it's financially viable for the parents as well. So we get a improvement in functional, the quality of life, with the improvement in gain. So this is the principle behind single event multi-level surgery. This is the birthday syndrome where the kids are subjected to surgeries every year. That's not what is advised. We talk about a special case of a crouch gait, which we all see. So this is a kid with a classical crouch gait. Same, we have explained the biomechanical, the problems in a crouch gait. Now, there are different options of surgical options which we can think about in such kids. So, The most important thing is to assess the hamstring contracture, because hamstring have to be lengthened. Now we have to assess the amount of pelvic tilt. We need to assess the amount of pelvic, the hip contractures, and we should never lengthen the tendoachilles or the gastrocnemius in such cases. So there are different ways of doing it. If there is a severe anterior pelvic tilt, we do not lengthen the hamstring much, because the hamstring will then be automatically lengthened because of the anterior pelvic tilt. In that case, we need to do some additional procedures like an extension osteotomy of the distal femur, which helps to correct the flexion deformity to some extent. We need to strengthen the anterior, the extension power of the knee. So that is done by doing a patellar tendon advancement. That helps to in a way strengthen the extension moment. So these are the various kinds of surgeries which we can do. I have not gone into the depth of the surgeries, but we should understand the principles, where we need to intervene, when we need to intervene, and that's how we do justice to a cerebral palsy care. And all kids should not continuously keep on having therapy without assessment of their bony deformity, without assessment of their gait, right? So you should know when to intervene surgically. I'm always there to help. You can always come out with any of the kids to have a detailed assessment.